On the way home from a couple of bars with two of his buddies, the driver lost control of the vehicle. It spun and slammed into a tree where Sean was sitting, and life changed forever. Sean became a prisoner in his own body. He can no longer walk. He can no longer talk. He uses an iPad that speaks the words that he's typed. And last month alone, we spoke to over 8,500 kids. I'm going to cue up another video. It has no sound. It's me taking care of Sean 10 years ago. I want you to notice the bar that's drilled into his hips. I want you to notice the tube that's hanging off of his stomach, a feeding tube, the scars on his body. His look, although his eyes are open and he may be following me around the room, he has no idea what's going on. He was like this for 39 days. I want to tell you that Sean is not paralyzed. He does have a traumatic brain injury.
I stand here in my wheelchair, looking at you, thinking how I was once just like all of you. Choices I made put me here. What happened to me is just unthinkable. But the unthinkable did happen. Society glamorizes alcohol so much. For some people, getting drunk is viewed as one of the most important things you can do while in college. I started drinking in high school. We would often go out and have pastor parties, or go to someone's house when their parents were out. I can remember nothing of what happened at night, but this is what I have been told. I had gone out to a couple of bars with two of my buddies. We were checking out the chicks and trying to have a good time. We were on the way home, 5 minutes from my apartment, when the driver lost control of his truck, and it spun and slammed into a tree on the passenger side. That is where I was sitting.
His pelvis was shattered, and that's why the bars were drilled into his hips. His bladder was ruptured, so he had a catheter or tube implanted surgically through his abdomen into his bladder. And guys, he had another catheter in his penis to keep his bladder draining and dry so that it could heal. His liver was lacerated or torn, his spleen was lacerated, his right lung was collapsed, his right arm was fractured. So there's a plate and screws now in his right arm up here in the humerus. Both of his collarbones or clavicles were broken. They didn't do anything about that because he couldn't move, so it really didn't matter at the time. Okay, so he could have died from all that. But he's actually, every one of those injuries has healed. The thing that, though, he cannot overcome is this traumatic brain injury. Let me tell you something about that. He was never hit in the head. But as the vehicle stopped, his head went from side to side really, really fast. The velocity of his head movement caused his brain to rub up against the inside of his skull. And it caused an all-over brain injury called a diffuse axonal injury. 90% of patients with that diagnosis never emerge from coma.
I was not born needing a wheelchair. Choices I made put me here.